going to continue to be the fact.
Yep.
Because Graves does way too much work. He is very, very strong. I 100% expect a Renekton to be picked up, but they don't need to lock it in right now if they don't want to. It's going to be pretty standard here on the side of Hanwha Life eSports with Misfortune for Deft and Willa picking up the Xin Zhao.
They'll take the Xin Zhao over the Viego. I was a little bit surprised to see that because we've seen so much success with Willa on recent games times, right? With the Viego over the Xin Zhao has a lot more versatility and team fights, a lot more explosive power. And they're just going to take that one right away, very early, very face up. And this means the Aphelios does go over, of course, to T1.
Yeah, it can be Aphelios or Lulu locked in as well.
Yeah.
And of course, Lulu, theoretically, a flex pick. They do have the best mid lane Lulu player of all time. So they could flex it, but I don't think anyone wants to see Faker on Lulu ever again, to be perfectly frank, as it is going to be some consideration before they actually lock that one in.
I do really like the Lulu as well, because you have the Graves. So even in a scenario where your Gumayusi gets sniped down, you're still able... the upside of leaving a Lulu up is that you are still always going to have a good pick between the Thresh and the Lulu, right? No matter what happens, unless they ban both, which is a really heavy investment, it's going to be comfort coming through here for Oner.
Yeah, and what do we think about the Talon being locked in last year? I mean, I think that would work with the Lulu as well, but now there is going to be flexibility to ban it away as Irelia being considered for either Morgan or Chovy. Both have played it, and Chovy's Irelia is one of the most terrifying picks that's in the meta at the moment.
I like the Talon for Oner. It really suits his playstyle. He's a lot more about ganking, getting over those walls, putting even some power in the bottom side of the map, something we don't see Willer do almost ever. But what's really interesting about not taking the Lulu is it's really difficult at this moment in time for Hanwha Life eSports to ban the Lulu and the Thresh and the Recon that could come as well. Like, you have so many different options right now that even though Lulu has historically been the strongest and the most commonly paired, you don't have to pick it up right here necessarily.
What I do really like is that Hanwha Life waits with picking up this Leona until a jungler is locked in for Oner. Oner has been defaulting to the Poppy a lot, and trying to play Irelia into Poppy is a miserable experience. Don't want to get into that, as more comfort being banned away. The Rise was a pick I haven't gotten the chance to talk about, but especially during playoffs, T1 leaned heavily on this pick to generate insane amount of tempo and swing around mid-game objectives, and that is something that I could still see Faker go back to. I do think it's going to be the Irelia for Morgan, because the Camille, I don't think at this point you can lock in. You're going to be a full AD composition, which you don't want. And oh boy.
Yeah, the Zoe pick here is fantastic. Obviously, sleeps work extremely well with Misfortune's ultimate. Bullet time going to go through. The only other champion I was thinking about right now, considering the bans that would have been great for Chovy with this composition that has such a frontline, is actually Victor. But you have great frontlining. It's going to be very difficult to collapse on the Zoe. She gets set up for so much damage in this comp.
Yeah, and this is a pretty understandable Orianna pickup here. If you go down the tier list, I think that Orianna fits in the middle of all the mid laners that have been banned away. Chovy's been very outspoken in the past about not enjoying playing Zoe, even though he was one of the best that we've had in the LCK. But
Thresh coming through.
I think, yeah, speaking of best in the LCK, Keria definitely the best at that. As Echo being hovered, I don't think it'll be locked in, but this is something that Keria has been playing in the support role.
No, not going to happen. It's going to be the Thresh. But there's so many champions that can be played, right, with this Aphelios. I think Thresh is a way...
we had to actually announce that stat, as it really bothers me, to be perfectly honest.
It's a way safer pick. And now you have an incredibly well-rounded composition here as T1. And I think if you're looking at Hanwha Life eSports right now, with all the bans that have come through and how late you pick this up, the Bram is the safest pick right now. Not amazing into the composition of T1. They don't have strong melee frontlining. But it's still going to be very solid when that Talon comes through, when the Graves is trying to get up at very low range.
The one thing I do really like about the Bram is that it leans heavily in what Hanwha has drafted here, which has been their identity the entire tournament, which is skirmishes, right? Try and get that Xin Zhao Bram combo out on the map and go from there.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I'm actually very interested to see how this one's going to go, especially with more of that mid-game poke style that Chovy can now take for himself. But ladies and gentlemen, what you're listening to now is one of the 3 regional remixes of the World's Anthem. This is Burn It All Down, Pacifica remix representing Korea.
Time to burn it all down in this best of 5.
I think it's so awesome that Hanwha Life eSports has stood up to T1 in the past, because I think that everyone is correct in expecting T1 to be the favorites in this matchup. But I think that it is much closer than the fans want it to be.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that there is a chance we see an upset tonight. It absolutely could happen. We know Hanwha Life eSports brought T1 to the brink in that gauntlet. They were almost the ones to go straight to groups and to skip that play-in tournament. They almost were there, one game away.
I gotta say, I was already excited, right? It's the LCK teams. It's a rematch of the Gauntlet, so I'm getting me even more excited.
Yeah,
I really like
it.
It's kind of low key as well, which I really appreciate. You know, you don't need to go into Grandeur when the match in front of you is this amazing.
Yeah, I felt like we needed to be like speaking, like saying something far more profound.
Yeah.
But I think
hey, it's only game one. It's only game one, guys.
Justice.
You know, we've got more time.
Yeah, hopefully we can practice. We're gonna have to we're gonna have to request to have that song just put on. Maybe if we get a LOL state or something like that, we can just request the music. Could be how it works out. But here we are onto the Rift for game number 1. T1 have elected to be on blue side, as they were, of course, the highest seed. Hanwha Life now will be playing from red. Both of these team compositions full of comfort for both of these teams. I think that when you have a look at the tier list of these champions and where they would sit, I think T1's probably got a stronger comp, quote unquote. But I think Hanwha Life have a lot of the tools that they would like. I think that what I'm drawn to is Morgan on this Irelia and seeing whether or not he's actually going to be able to have an impact.
Yeah, it's really interesting, you know, between both solo laners of these two teams, the different power that they have.
And remember, you can tweet in as well. Use that hashtag Verizon 5G all chat. Let us know what you thought about the regional anthem. I think it's super cool, this new idea. So let us know what you think. Also, let us know whether you think that I am a complete moron for predicting that Hanwha Life is going to win this. Because based on the fan vote, I think that there's a lot of people that might.
But you have been right thus far. You believed in Hanwha when no one else did, and that faith did indeed pay off. When we look at the early pathing here, completely unsurprising. Willow is pathing away from top. Morgan will not be receiving any attention this game, like he hasn't in the past. And I do wonder, especially with the setup that's available in both mid and bot, whether we're going to see any attention paid to that, especially with the Xin, I think, in terms of early dueling with both the Zoe or the Bram. A lot stronger than what T1 has available. I think Oner needs a little bit more time. Also not gone for any of the aggressive summoners. No Ignite, Flash, or TP rather.
Yeah, and I want to talk about sort of a bit of the best of 5 mentality as well, as this is our first best of 5 of the tournament. I think one of the best ideas in a best of 5 series is to start
with your
series.
best foot forward?
Well, not with, I mean, yes, obviously, but I think starting with a little bit more of a scaling focus with champions like, you know, the Orianna, the Aphelios, for example, so that the onus isn't on you to be proactive.
Sure.
Because when it is, all of this pressure, as well as going to come in and have a look for Faker, but Faker, of course, the king of being ganked early in the mid lane, knows exactly what's going on.
Yeah, the reason I kind of interjected and said best foot forward is for me because I thought this comp, what we're seeing from both of these teams is so much stylistically what they like to play, right? You've got Morgan on a split pushing champion where he can actually initiate for his team. He's not on a big damage dealer, right? And I do really feel like if you're going to start a best of 5 like this, you know, you just play standard, you play to your strengths, and then you evolve as the series goes on.
And my question going into the mid-game is T1 going to be able to generate a lot of the laning leads like they have been able to do against basically every other team? We've seen this Aphelios for Guma, Canna's Graves or Jace, whichever he is on at the time, be able to generate immense CS leads, obviously in mid. Not really within the realm of expectations considering the level of laner that Chovy is. And also Atlus, I'm kind of hurt, you know, that you didn't pay as much attention to play-ins, because you know, that there's been best of 5s.
Well, I mean, yes, but not so far since the group stage.
There's a different scale here, Cronicler.
That's not what I'm saying.
The most beautiful thing of it, that I know that you've been so invested in Hanwha's journey, so I know that you know this.
No, well, of course I know that. Oh yeah, but it is the first of the best of 5s of this stage of Worlds. Okay, let's maybe go with that. Thank you for
this damage though.
As Faker's down to about 100 health. A couple more autos will need to come through. Command Protect is going to make sure that Faker does survive with his flash intact as Hook connects on the bottom side, but Willer is here in the nick of time.
We'll be totally fine here. Scuttles traded. And, you know, what I was going to get into here is Chovy is the type of player who will put the threat on with the Zoe. A lot of Zoe players play a lot more passively. They're sometimes fearful of ganks potentially, as we got action all over the place.
Yeah, Morgan going for a bit of a trade. Working out pretty nicely there, as he had just teleported back in, so don't get overly excited, everyone. This is, of course, Canna just trying to get as much as he can before getting that teleport off, restocking on some items, as, of course, Morgan is a bit of a soldier. He's got a backup sword and his sword and shield. He is ready to go to battle.
Canna comes back to lane here, but something I wanted to point out earlier in terms of the stylistic differences between these two teams is that with Hanwha Life eSports, the majority of their damage comes from Chovy, 31 compared to Morgan sitting at 19. And the exact opposite is true of T1, where Canna sits at 31% of the team's damage and Faker sits at 19. And I think that big difference is what's so interesting between these two teams is we're going to see in these drafts, Chovy needs to be on champions, I think, to find success versus T1, where he can carry and do damage. If you put him on a global champion against a team like T1 that's decision-making is so good and isn't going to falter on macro, and he isn't going to get Morgan fed and get Deft ahead as easily as he would against some of the weaker teams, I think there will be a struggle here for Hanwha Life eSports. That's why I was mentioning the Victor. I like this Zoe pick quite a lot, and I think picks like Azir are going to continue to be banned.
And what I'm really liking from T1, and Canna also should be very much in the know that Wheeler is here.
Yeah, Morgan doesn't have a reset right now as Wind Becomes Lightning does connect. There's the ulti to come forward from Canna. He is going to be absolutely fine, and Oner not coming in for the assist doesn't give away his position.
Yeah, really nice smoke screen there. But what we saw was that the reason why I was fairly certain that Canna was going to be fine is because Wheeler was double spotted. There were 2 wards in his jungle, and we saw that the moment that he appeared on those wards, Gumayusi and Keria used that time to also go in very aggressively on that bot side and try and keep the shove in that lane. And that is something that I think T1 has done exceptionally, even domestically, is how much they force prio based on the knowledge that they have. As Chovy...
Yeah, Shockwave going to come through. There's the hook perfectly lined up as Chovy just didn't want to flash. Eventually he will, but they also have to invest the exhaust from Vsta, so a lot of power taken away now from Hanwha Life eSports.
Yeah, it was a bit of a risky position there for Chovy to be in, considering they didn't know where Keria was. He loves to roam. It's one of the things that you're going to see from this guy on his Nautilus, obviously on his Thresh. Every single time he plays it, you give him a chance to get out of lane, and he's going to look for an opportunity. And he was standing just in range of that hook, and that's 2, you know, well, actually just 1, but the one big flash tool now is gone for Chovy. And you get 2 big things out of this. One is going to be this extra prio. Now you're grouped up, heading towards the top side of the map before this Herald spawns.
Yeah, it's almost T1 time on the map right now, as we are approximately 40 seconds away from that Rift Herald spawning, and right now T1 are in a fantastic position to take that one away. Currently with a slight gold lead just from laning advantages that they picked up for themselves as Keria puts down a ward, gets the good news that Morgan has no idea what's going on. Willa comes on over. He's trying to scan things out, but Morgan's going to have to play very defensively here. We'll see whether he does actually Blade Surge forward or look for some of this CS as Keria now searching for the hook, finds the Blade first. End of the line comes on in, and that is a very dead Irelia and first blood to T1.
2 huge plays from Keria right off the get-go. Takes away Chovy's flash. And they're able to get prio and set up for gathering around this Herald. Then they're able to, right before it spawns, pick off Morgan with a fantastic hook. He has a control ward with him, is able to verify Morgan, doesn't know he's coming. And T1, they love to fight for these Heralds. Sometimes they flip games over it. It's actually one of the things that Hanwha Life should be looking forward to is T1 might take a bad fight on this Herald, but when you get that free kill, you push Chovy away, you get his flash. This is just easy pickings for this early game for T1.
And if Morgan doesn't die there, if the coordination is a little bit better, Wheeler says, hey, my rep buff is missing, they might be in topside. They know how much T1 loves to play towards this. I think they might be fine because Deft and Vsta were able to shove in an entire wave into that bot lane turret, and without a teleport available, there was no recourse. But because that kill was given up, no contest was possible surrounding the Herald. It's been a kill, it's been the turret plates picked up, and now all of a sudden, Gumayusi is getting even more fat. That wave that he missed on bot side doesn't matter anymore, and T1 might be looking to just push further and further, which is their early game has been incredibly dominant. In the LCK, even in games that they've lost, those first 15 minutes are always lethal. It's going to be so much harder for Hanwha Life to kind of skirmish their way back into this game. Picks with the bubble, or possibly with Bram and Xin Zhao finding an angle somewhere on the map.
I mean, Xin Zhao as a champion, you know, obviously wants to get that big lead early on. So hold that thought.
Cute little shockwave here from Faker, just getting a fair bit of damage onto Chovy. Chovy should be able to trade back quite nicely, though, as Faker takes a nap and is going to take the worst of it. As Chovy still wanting a little bit more here, finds himself a cleanse on the ground, but It's not going to help him out too much here.
Problem with this too for Hanwha Life eSports is that even though Chovy gets the better of the trade here in mid lane, they're not going to be able to get a cross-map play. You had Canna on the bottom side of the map immediately pushing the wave there. Now Morgan's catching it. Chovy's pushed out a lane here. They can't contest a Drake. They can't start a Drake, rather. And so T1 just have ultimate control on the map in all lanes and all parts. And you just have to be so careful with giving T1 this little bit of an edge with a composition like this where they already have such safe engage across all parts of the game.
And also look at the power of these T1 picks. You can argue that, of course, the Talon in of itself, not going to be the greatest. I think that outside of moving up front and denying vision, it might be a little bit hard to find a specific engage. But simultaneously, like Graves, Orianna, Aphelios, all these picks in the mid to late game are going to be terrifying, right? And it's Keria's Thresh. We've seen him have, I think, perhaps the most dominant support game that we've had the entire year in the LCK on the specific champion.
I think it was one of the most impressive Thresh games that I've ever seen
and you
in my life. And I've been casting a lot of League of Legends. Seen a fair bit of that.
Well, this Drake is going to go over for free because there's a little bit of a hole in T1's vision, and Chovy was seeing the better end there of the mid lane, so can't contest here as T1 don't know about this, don't have full vision. It's actually taken away there by Willer. So this ends up being a nice trade back for Hanwha Life, basically getting an objective free. It's not as equivalent, of course, as the power you're going to get in that Herald, but they're looking for something here bottom side. Canna does not have vision.
Yeah, Willer's going to come on down here, even on levels here between the jungler and the top laner. Canna has been on an island just a little bit here. Some last-minute plates to come through, or last 3-minute plates, I guess, if you want to be technically correct. As Gumayusi looking for Vsta here underneath the turret. The flash gets him out of the way of the hook, as Vista's looking to keep himself alive. Oner now in trouble as Deft turns up once again. He gets exhausted immediately. Vsta, what the heck was that? Unbelievable play from the Hanwha Life support, and they take away T1's jungler. Chovy now looking to try and get some more done, but Canna is going to turn up once again. Decent little paddle star, and they get the flash out for the shockwave.
And even the bottom side of the map, Irelia is getting pushed there. There's waves crashing into a turret. He's going to get another plate here at least. And this is a win in all 3 lanes here for Hanwha Life eSports.
And this is a really big swing. And T1 think they can go for the top side play because it's their strong side, right? They've been diverting all their resources. They know we're going to give them the Drake. It doesn't matter. We swapped our bot side to top to make sure that we can keep that push going, that we can get more plates onto Aphelios. And then they think it's easy peasy. It's a dive on the Bram. We have 3 people here, but Oner isn't actually there at the start of their play. A little bit over-eager from T1. And now at gold lead, that was 1.6k. All of a sudden, a lot less there. Yes, there is still a lead, but this does show that you need to respect Hanwha. And talk about Chovy, Deft has had a stellar tournament thus far. Just picked up the first kill, finished his mythic. And
it is looking hopeful, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yep, nice little drowsy there from Chovy. Picks himself up a claw, but Keria is here at exactly the right time to make everything okay.
And the amount of pressure that Chovy has put on Faker this game has meant that he hasn't been able to make any teleport plays. And this is something that Faker has found so much success with the Rise with, for example. We've seen him on TF, which is why we were calling for that ban in the draft. He ends up being with his team in those topside plays you were just talking about so often, but because so much pressure has been put on him, he hasn't been able to utilize that teleport for utility, only for lanes so far. As you can see, he teleports right back because he ran out of mana there. And it's really unfortunate because that's one advantage he had over Chovy. Had he not been so pushed in, could have looked for something there on the top side, but he's just been sitting in lane.
Also, very important is that we see a really big swap here from what the T1 has mostly done, which is funnel all resources into Canna. Right? They've been, in most of their games, not all of them, but the biggest amount has been Faker on a global champion and try to get Guma will be in lane, Keria will be out, Oner's camping top, and Canna's getting all the resources that he needs to carry. But in this game, it's been all about Gumayusi, and this is something that T1, we've seen them do every now and then. We also saw them do when Teddy was on the team, and he was the one playing, or he's still on the team, but when he was the one actually playing, important clarification there.
When he wasn't on the bench.
Yeah, exactly. And I am honestly very happily surprised to think that for Vsta, that individual play in of itself might not look too big, but that is the type of momentum swings that have plagued T1 in the past. This team is incredibly good at finding early game leads, but actually maintaining them, they're not as strong as a team like Damwon, where once they get a lead, that lead is not going anywhere. But T1 have had a lot of these swings in the past. Now they go in on Deft.
Yeah, Oner's looking for the dive. This turret is so extraordinarily low. They get themselves the teleport out as Gumayusi taking a lot of damage here as well. Deft moving forward as Hanwha. They do have all the boys together.
Yeah, they're going to look for a fight
might need
here.
to get out of this one. Yeah, exactly right. Troll Ward goes down. Hanwha Life, wrestle back, some vision control.
Right
now looking for Shirley, exactly right.
I mean, this is actually an extremely aggressive play that T1 attempted. They were able to lantern Oner in for him to jump over the wall. There's almost no turret there, but you're really underestimating the fact that bullet time can clear that wave. It's not really a feasible dive to pull off here.
Well, Oner's going to get slowed down by the Winter's Bite. Teleport available from the Graves. And he is making his way towards the mid lane, utilizing it. We'll now get this minion wave pushed forward, but Hanwha got the prize they were looking for.
I would have loved if Canna just stayed bot and pushed that bot side turret, right? Could have just gotten that. T1, they were really looking for a fight there, but no one on Hanwha actually making a mistake, walking up too far and getting hooked in. Now, Gumayusi's still going to be able to pick this up, but I do love the investment from Hanwha to like try and actually hold onto their objectives as much as they can. Once the teleport was forced, though, I think T1 should have said, okay, we've already got the summoner. We can give them Herald, just back off, let Canna get the turret, and then look further. I don't think that teleport from Canna had to be invested, but clearly a team call. And that does mean that you get a little bit less than you could have gotten out of that play, but it's still a growing lead for T1.
Yeah, it does also, I think, really showcase that Hanwha Life eSports knows their opponent well. Like, they're playing so well around what T1 would do in this scenario. They're prepared to counter this dive and take the Rift Herald because they know T1's going to be coming at this timing. And that's a good sign for a best of 5 like this. You're not figuring it out on the fly. You already know. Now they're going to look for some extra gold here with this second Herald.
Yep. Turret going to go down low. Shockwave not quite able to find Chovy there as the ulti comes through. Faker so incredibly low after the bullet time, but isn't going to fall down. Doesn't have teleport, so he's going to be away for a little while as Chovy as well, under half HP. You can see Hanwha Life eSports still wanting to fight for this Drake. 5 versus 4. Drowsy comes through. This is part of the danger time for this Zoe. Collateral damage just wide, sidestepped by the Zoe. And T1 wrestled out of the river as there's the Moonlight Vigil to come down. Morgan could be in trouble here. Flashes the hook, not quite long enough. Great double stun there from Morgan, but they are still going to be able to get pressure onto this turret. T1 wanting to grab that is now Vsta looking to come round once again. There's the ulti to come through for Morgan. Only one person can take that lantern, and now Canna could be in trouble. He's down so low and trying to get the damage out as Deft finishes him off in the end. Morgan likely to fall as well. It's 2 for 1 so far for T1. And Hanwha Life eSports now forced to leave. Flash comes out from Chovy. That's one that he stole away as T1 are on the wrong side of this Drake, but now with the man advantage.
It's not over just yet. They keep looking.
I mean, this is so risky for Hanwha Life eSports here.
Oner parkouring his way in. There's the Shockwave ball delivery system here, and Vsta, he's going to go golden for a little while. Stands beside Willa, keeps himself alive for the moment. As Oner, below half health, great hook to come through from Keria, but there is another stopwatch from this team. Of course, Willa, no way out. Wasn't going to invest the flash, as it turns out, as another bubble lands, but I think the T1 have finally won the fight. What do you think, gentlemen?
This is the most Chovy Life eSports scenario that you could imagine, as he's sitting back with mostly full health on the Zoe, trying to hit these pot shots while everyone else is blocking, and they're coming back in.
Does Deft have ultimate? No, he doesn't, as Oner could be in trouble here. One last auto. It's actually going to be the Zoe that picks it up with a bubble through the wall. Ocean Soul is what the Rift is going to be made out of, and that's actually amazing for a Zoe, but also pretty good for a Talon lying in wait to kill someone with all of these extra brushes.
And if this skirmish shows us anything, I can't even call it a team fight because it felt like a 2v2, a 3v3, a 4v4 all happening at the same time if you look at how drawn out it is, right? Because both of these two teams go in very hard. Canna is able to actually stay alive. One of the big powers of the Graves is how tanky, deceptively, he really is. And there's so many moments where you think it's over, but then it's not.
It's not over.
Yeah, it's still not over, actually. Is 2 levels behind. Willa's going to go in onto Faker here. Still, no, doesn't have the Crescent card available. I was about to say he did. Certainly did not, but Faker is just going to get away. No one there to back him up just yet.
So
and this is such a clear-cut sign of, even though I think in terms of macro, T1 is still the one making the better moves, right? They're earlier to the objectives. I think the shot calling is a little bit crisper. But in terms of raw mechanics, Hanwha Life is showing why they're in this quarterfinal.
Yep, Vsta caught in amongst a whole lot of people as the Shockwave finds absolutely no one still. Keria locks down that kill. In the meantime, Canna takes the turret on the bottom side, and T1 are adding winning to their winning.
I'm not on pursuit. I need to do replay. I think Faker actually pulled Vsta out of his stand behind Bram, so he didn't have the opportunity to jump back after he got in.
Yeah, it definitely looked like that. And that's one of those things that you could do as Orianna. It's so strong against Xin Zhao and the Irelia and, of course, the Bram in this very rare circumstance where you can actually pull it off, is to actually pull people out of their engages as Deft might be in trouble.
Yeah, kind of looking for the dive right underneath his turret. He had the shield bow, and he's absolutely fine. Just walks up and takes down the AD carry of Hanwha Life eSports.
He's got plated steel caps. He's going to live through the damage that Misfortune can put off. And in that extended trade, you're always going to win when you have the shield bow, even under turret. And he just can't get out of it. There's no mobility whatsoever for the Misfortune. A heroic play here from Canna, and T1 are completely in control of this game now.
Really loving the Graves first pick. Really paying off there. Diving as an AD carry, you know, another AD carry on the turret. No problem. 20 minutes into the game, and now we're starting to see the acceleration, and this is where I think the true test begins for Hanwha. You've been able to match up thus far, but now it's back-to-back trades that are slightly favorable for T1, and let's not forget, even though I think the gold lead in of itself is surmountable, if you look at the Hanwha comp, when playing from behind, champions like the Irelia, like the Xin Zhao, are a very bad experience.
Yeah, and this is the mid-game, right? This is exactly when Hanwha Life designed their composition to be strong. Now they have to try and work on a split push comp that is much more difficult to actually utilize. And using hashtag Verizon 5G all chat, Tom has messaged in to say, I don't have the same faith that Atlus does, but I love an underdog story. Anyone remember TPA? I think there might be a lot of people that don't, to be perfectly honest, because that was a great many years ago, but I certainly do, Tom.
We all remember.
Absolutely
Tom knows. Tom knows what's up. And you know, going back to what you guys were kind of getting at here with this composition in terms of what this comp could do from behind, it really is going to be so based upon these engaged champions now for Hanwha Life eSports and the front line that needs to be done for Chovy and Deft. And it is kind of odd and ironic that Chovy can also himself be the best initiation that Hanwha Life eSports have, because if he sleeps the right target, there is so much follow-up engaged, there's so much burst there. But if you can't pull that off and you keep getting shut down every time you try to go in as a Xin Zhao, every time you go in as the Irelia, and T1 catch you at every turn and shockwave you, then how do you team fight against this Aphelios that's always going to have more consistent damage than this Misfortune? The Graves, it's always going to have longer fight damage more than the Irelia will.
And I'm not entirely sure how as Hanwha, if you don't find a big break into the game within the next 5 to 10 minutes, you're going to be able to stand up to the late game. Look at Gumayusi's items. He's already gotten the Lord Dominix against the amount of health stacking that's going to be available for Hanwha. It's going to provide incredible value. A little bit anti-synergistic, you know, when you get the extra health, the shield from your shield bow, but against the amount of dive that's available from Hanwha Life is understandable. Also note how stalwart T1 have been defending their mid lane turret, knowing that not taking that, as I'm sure you would have pointed out, Wolf, had I not swept that point away. I know you were waiting for it. It becomes so much harder to actually find those bubbles and get that consistent impact, because I talked about the relative lack of engage for T1, right? You saw it a little bit in one of the earlier mid-game fights where they wanted to re-engage, but weren't able to. As they might go in here.
Faker looking for the shockwave, finds it onto Willa there pretty comfortably as the ulti comes through to keep the Xin Zhao alive, but it's not going to work for long enough. The Gore Drinker certainly working out quite nicely, but it didn't change the fate of the Xin Zhao as Oner was looking to take care of that backline. They do back away though, just taking down the jungler just in time for this Ocean Drake to spawn.
And this is where we have to start talking about that Zoe turret, but we also have to start talking about the fact that with these lanes pushing here, and Canna has had so much pushing power this entire game for free, non-stop, you have no vision anymore. And if you don't have vision, Zoe is fighting blind, especially with all these brushes on Ocean Rift. So you're just not going to be able to even walk towards this, and you're just going to be throwing darts in the dark, essentially, as Chovy in this game if you can't win a team fight before an objective, because T1 have so much pushing power. There's so much wave clear with this comp as well. Like, you're just clearing waves, and T1 are getting objectives.
In addition to that, I think one of the problems that you're facing now as Hanwha is Chovy has gone for a very utility-based build, so he has a lot of survivability. He can throw out a lot of bubbles, right? Has the Everfrost, also went for the Lucidity Boots. But when it comes to wall damage output, it is not going to be as good as some of the builds that we, for example, seen BDD go for, where you do find those consistent one-taps. In addition to that, I don't think anyone can really match Canna in the side lane. And when your Irelia can't reliably match someone inside, a lot of the value does get taken away as Shockwave!
Chovy just walked into the Shockwave. He does use his Zhonya's. Try and keep himself up, and now will flash away, but Willa is going to pay for his sins. The ulti comes down, and it is not going to save the Xin Zhao. Oner not done just yet, as Everfrost looks to try and deny T1. But it looks like they might be aiming for a Baron instead, and that would be a massive swing in this game, in a position where T1 were already massively ahead.
Yeah, they're already so far ahead. You don't have a jungler anymore as Hanwha Life eSports. 100% you can take this. Hanwha Life, this is a mistake to challenge.
Yeah, well, Keria finds yet another hook, but there's no backup as now Morgan looking to get in there, does dive into the back of the pit as Hanwha looking for more. The Baron does go over to T1, but can they keep themselves alive? Will any of these Barons make it out of the pit as Guma is about to say yes? The bullet time not finding the value they were looking for, but the bubble will now connect. And Chovy's going to find the paddle star there as well. So Oner has been taken down. 2 Barons remain on the side of T1, and it looks like 2 Barons will survive.
The risk to actually challenge this as Hanwha Life eSports, despite what was a fairly successful team fight there, was so high. You end up getting wiped there. You might just lose the game in that moment. You're going to lose the rest of your map control. You're going to give over those inner turrets and inhibitor control as well. But they end up fighting it back. They take away some of those Baron buffs. And it's really, as we look at this Axe replay here, all about the fact that they're able to pick Keria off alone. There's a little bit of a disconnect here between T1's front line, well, really Thresh, and the rest of the team. Because yes, they know they have this Baron, they need to guarantee it, but your opponent doesn't have a smite. You could have turned this together a lot earlier, and now you've just given the opportunity for Morgan to close the gap on your squishy back line.
And I want to again highlight Vsta, able to both hit the Winter's Bite on Faker to make sure that he dies, Irelia diving into the back line, and then also getting the passive on top of Gumayusi, and it's only through that survivability that he has with the shield bow as well as with his red gun that he's able to stay alive throughout all that. The one downside, even though you pick up a couple of kills for Hanwha, is that I think as C1 you're still relatively happy. Canna still, but also look at who the people are that still have the buff. Canna, who you want to put in the side lane, and then you have Aphelios in Guma, who's going to just be there anyway, and you can set up a 4-1 and still utilize the power of the Baron.
Well, speaking of utilizing things, Vsta going to throw out his ultimate. Oner just going to say no. He is a bruiser assassin right now. Just too many archetypes here for this Talon, who is very, very strong.
Where's Orn?
Yeah, Chovy now diving over the wall. And Faker looking to throw his orb out. Oh, that hook very, very close to landing onto his former teammate there as Chovy. These portal jumps are dangerous, but he does need to try and utilize them as these turrets are just falling one after the other. Vsta, no ultimate available, but he's still stepping forward, trying to deny this turret from T1, but it is not going to work. The Red Bull Baron power play ticking up to 2,000 gold. And T1's lead doing the same thing. And you can 6,000 right now.
You can notice too in some of these fights the point that Cronicler made earlier about Chovy's build here with the Everfrost. If you can't get close enough to ever use that, you're going to wish you had less survivability with that zone use and actually just more pure damage. Maybe you could blow somebody up because T1 are just grouped up. They have better vision. So if you just hit someone with a paddle star with this low damage build, it's not going to be that impactful. T1 will just sit through it and move on. And if you're the one who has to carry these fights and look for picks and look for those blow-ups, this build probably isn't it. Now, I understand that in the longer fight, the survivability might mean that he could carry that extended fight, but with where we are in this game, I don't think that longer fight almost ever happens.
Biggest issue here for Hanwha Life is the item that Gumayusi just finished. Because what you saw earlier, where Gumayusi, you know, it's a long fight, and you're able to almost kill him. You don't quite get him, but at least you can walk out yourself. That walking out yourself, not happening anymore. The Infinity Edge is finished on this already incredibly fed Aphelios, meaning that as Hanwha Life, if you go in on Gumayusi now, either you 100-0 him, or he will 1v9 the entire fight and blow you up. And then the problem with that is, talk so much about Gumayusi, but Canna, very fed as well for the CS lead, able to pick up a solo kill on Deft, able to pick up multiple turrets, and now Soul Point available for T1 if they pick up this Drake.
Yeah, Bubble not going to quite find Canna there. Saw Chovy fishing for it. Hanwha with some okay vision, but T1 doing their homework. They've tidied all of it up around this area. Hanwha now trying to protect that one ward that they have, but the orb sitting right in that brush. Canna gets on over. Remember, Faker's shockwave, it is right there. It is ready to go as Oner taken down to half health. Hanwha still with a fair bit of fight left in them. Chovy looking for a bubble, doesn't quite find it there. As the teleport comes in, it's Faker that locks down the Drake as Will is trying to keep himself alive once again. Flashes out, and he is going to survive for the moment, but T1 looking to try and race for this inhibitor turret in the mid lane, and they will have inside track to get themselves there.
Look at the teleport top here from Canna too. He's going to go for this inhibitor turret. You've got two problems at once here as Hanwha Life eSports. Morgan just used his teleport to come into that fight so late. Then they had to flash out. Willer's flashless. I mean, T1 are looking to actually start finishing this game shortly here. You make any mistakes as Hanwha, the game ends.
Well, now Morgan trying to go in. Actually, just a bit of a drive-by there. as Keria's Lanterns have just been amazing this game.
I think the support play in general has been, from both supports, has been impeccable this game. Also love the teleport from Chovy there. Might not have seen it, but he teleported on his own Nexus turret to get to the wave as soon as possible, especially with Spellbook. Not losing out too much, because if he hadn't done that, pretty sure that Canna at the very least would have gotten an inhibitor turret. With the amount of damage he has available, possibly an inhibitor. And I think Hanwha Life, they're hanging in there valiantly, but again, and this has been the recurring theme ever since that early skirmish that took about a minute, and it was like at 3 different places, back to back to back. It's T1 that actually wins, right? They have the gold lead, they have soul point now. Once they get the ocean sword, it's going to be even harder with the amount of sustain already available on this team. And I think your window as Hanwha has now closed.
As Hanwha Life eSports, I think you have to group up on Baron. I mean, you had to group up faster and you can't because you have to deal with those waves, but you have to fight for vision first here and foremost. And if you can catch somebody with a paddle star, get a pick, that's how you start. I mean, that's not going to be too bad for Hanwha Life eSports. That's going to be on cooldown for a while here. But you have to fight for this vision 100%. And the fact that they have 2 teleports missing here is so problematic. You can't flank anymore.
Yeah. Looking to go in for something potentially. Not able to quite find anything here as T1 just own the Rift. And against a Zoe, like, she just can't do anything when that's the case. Oner's even going to steal away this red buff. The entire jungle on both sides of the map belongs to T1. Is okay, Oner going to take a little bit of a nap here, but he's just so tanky. Willa can't say the same thing as Morgan looks for some stuns, but he's not going to quite find them. The Crescent Guard looks to try and keep Willa alive, but it isn't going to be enough as Canna's going to get knocked up, but that is just disengaged from Hanwha Life. Another dive forward as it is going to be a bit sleepy time for Oner, but he is going to be able to make his way out. And all of these attempted picks, Chovy's landed so many bubbles, but it just does not matter.
And while this happened, T1 had a way set up on bot side to shove in. That's been pushed into the turret, getting damage, giving up 3 minions as well.
I mean, this is a fight that T1 just avoided by tossing ultimates into a choke point and letting the waves here do the work. There's no inhibitors down here, but they had push in top and mid. Remember, Canna teleported earlier to shove that wave into the inhibitor turret, so T1 tossing a shockwave. Canna even ults onto the red buff. You push Hanwha Life eSports back. You have removed all the vision around the Baron pit, and T1 are like, yeah, I used 2 ults before this fight starts, but you can't teleport flank because I know Morgan's teleports down, Chovy's teleports down, so I don't even get to fight as Hanwha Life eSports. If you're Hanwha Life eSports, you don't get to flank, you don't get to come forward. And T1 are like, well, now you got to clear waves. I'm going to kill the Baron. Look at how much damage we have 32 minutes into the game with this Aphelios. There's no way you can contest. There's just absolutely no way. And T1, calm, slow and steady, going to win the race here, it looks like.
Yeah, Willa able to get himself a Raptor. And that's good news. If Hanwha Life eSports right now, that's what we have to be talking about when it comes to the positives.
No.
Like, that is... No, this is not a good thing, Cronicler. I'm not trying to say that things are okay, because that is the most okay that they are, is being able to get a Raptor camp. Because this is, like, the game has ticked past the Hanwha time. They had their time, theoretically. It was about 15 minutes into the game until about 25 is when they theoretically should have been strong. That time has gone. T1 in so much control as Hanwha trying to do their very best to defend their base, but 2 inhibitors go down. 3-man Shockwave just found out of nowhere from Faker as Willa. The only way that he can go is forward. Here's Xin Zhao. This kid has not changed. And T1, they're looking to end it all right here, right now, as Morgan very low as well. Trying to defend that 1 Nexus turret. Vsta being a valiant defender, but I don't think it's going to be enough. The Nexus turrets just melt at the hands of Gumayusi's Crescendum. The Nexus going to follow suit, and T1, all business in game 1, destroy Hanwha Life eSports.
Very dominant performance. The early game, Hanwha Life eSports did trade a few back. They were able to stop that push on the top side. They got the follow-up Rift Herald there. But in the mid to late game, they didn't play to their win conditions as well as T1 did. Non-stop, using Canna to push, controlling waves, and with that, controlling vision meant that Hanwha Life eSports couldn't wrestle back control. They were always 1 step behind with a composition that just can't play that way. You can't scale better than T1's comp with what they're running.
And here in this first game, we see both the reasons why Hanwha Life are in the first place, which is that mechanically they can actually stand up, right? I think those skirmishes were a really good example of what could have been. But then you also see why T1 was first in their group. Because when it comes to actually getting objectives, using the pressure that they have available, and consistently out-trading your opponent cross-map, it's hard to match them.
Yeah, and one of those big questions that we asked as well was, how much have T1 actually improved in their time at Worlds? And I think the answer is a whole lot. But on the other side of the break, the desk will be breaking down all of the action. But as we go, we're getting another peek behind the scenes.